right, I am going to be getting my palette ready here for my project tonight. I am going to be doing a painting tutorial on using a stencil. So what I have here for my project is I found this pre-cut, pre-painted and already pre-distressed wall hanger at Walmart. Great little find there. And what I'm going to be doing is securing a stencil to this wood piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up and I'm going to tape it down. And for this next process, I will turn you guys down to my work area. Just so you can see what's going on. There we go. That looks pretty good. Kind of, sort of. That. Okay. Okay. So. So I have my stencil. I'm going to grab some tape here, and again I'm just going to use this tape to hold down my stencils, and I want it the very minimum in each corner or area. And for tonight, I was going to use just two colors. I'm going to be using some phthalo blue, which is a really, really pretty, dark, deep, rich blue. And then I'm going to be using some metallic gold to go on that. So, what do you need to work with a stencil? Well, obviously, you're going to want a paintbrush at the very least, but I really like these bouncers. They call them spouncers, and they're foam brushes, and you just dip them in the paint and you just bounce them around on your stencil. So I really like those, but you don't have to have those. You can have just a simple paintbrush, or maybe even a paper towel. So I'm going to make sure this is tacked down. Okay, so I just want to make sure that it's secure enough it's not going to be sliding or moving around in my process here. So just want to make sure I've got this lined up. It just so happened that this stencil worked out really well. It fit this piece that I bought. So the other thing when you want to think about when you're working with a stencil is really about how much paint you're using, or how much paint you're putting on this little foam brush and you're stamping around. The thicker the paint, the more paint you have, the more likely you are to slip that paint underneath your stencil, and then when next time you press down on it, it's going to go outside of the cut. And that's really, you just don't want that, because it's not going to, just really isn't going to appear right. So it's going to mess up the stencil. So I'm just dipping this little spouncer into the paint, and then I'm coming back to another spot, and I'm just basically doing that. I'm dabbing with this spouncer. I'm getting a light coat of paint, and I'm going to start at the top so that I'm working my way down so I'm not sticking my hands in wet paint. So I have a little bird up here, so that's where I'm going to start. I'm just going to just gently pounce this brush with the paint on it over the stencil. You really want to stay as vertical as you can. Try not to go at any angles or change the direction, because that's, again, you're going to get that paint to go outside of your stencil and it's going to rough up the edges. Okay, so I'm going to keep going here. Just going to keep filling this brush. And then I'm going to go over this next spot up here. I'm going to really try to make sure that I'm not lifting the stencil in any way. In your fingers, you will get paint on your fingers. So be prepared for that to get a little bit messy in this process. Hopefully the stencil is going to hold up here, and then when you go to pull it off, if there's still some little glitches in little places that got too much paint, you can always take a paintbrush back and kind of fix it and go over it. So this may take a few minutes. I'm going to try to, it's bouncing a little bit. I want to make sure that's secure. So I'm just going to be doing my thing here. If you've hopped on, say hi. Hope your day is going well. Okay. So again, I'm just really trying to make sure that this stencil is not hopping up and down on me, because again, the paint will get underneath that. So just a gentle up and down motion. Okay. The other thing you want to also take into consideration when you're working with stencils is the process for peeling it off. You really want to give the area a chance to dry before you peel it off, because if it's wet and you go to peel off your stencil, you're liable to smear it, unfortunately. So I have my hot gun, my heat gun over here. So when I get this done, I'm going to do kind of a blow dry session on it and dry it out, and then I'll lift it. All right, this is a little therapeutic here. Just tapping away and all right, I'm going to do this part. Again, I got some lifting going on here with the paint, so I'm trying to keep my fingers in places where it's going to help keep that stencil pushed down. Stencils are a great way to make a quick little project. Especially if you're feeling a little creatively stifled. You can always find a stencil, and it can kind of help get the creative part of your brain inspired. You don't have to use all of the stencil. You can just use parts of it that you want. Again, it's all about making sure that everything is tacked down and it's not moving. Don't really want it to be bouncing up and down, because again, it can ruin your edges. The paint slips underneath the edge of the stencil, and it can, you know, make your edges uneven. And there's going to be a certain amount of unevenness to these edges anyway, because this is a distressed wood hanger, and it's going to have some little nooks and crannies that things don't always work into or work out of. So there we go. Yeah, so I can see this spot is really high here because the wood is uneven. So I'm gonna kind of have to come back with my paintbrush, I think, and finish that out, because it's just going to be really hard to get in there, and it's going to make a mess. So again, I'm using a paint called Phthalo Blue. I really like it. It's a very deep, vibrant blue. I'm just, oh, don't bounce, don't bounce. Again, I've got this raised area, so I may have to come back in with my brush and just kind of help fill it in, because it just isn't going to reach quite that far. Has to really press it down. So I'm going to move on to a different spot. And these little foam brushes, you're going to want to treat them just like any other brush that you have. You want to make sure that they're washed after each use, or at least put in some water and rinsed, and then washed when you're completely finished. And if you do it, you take care of them, they'll last you a long time. Okay, I'm getting close to the end of this stencil here. Again, I'm just trying to make sure that my stencil isn't bouncing too much. It's staying pretty secure, because I don't want the paint to bleed underneath it. Kind of looks like a little bit of a big blue mess, huh? But we will get to see this design here in just a couple seconds, minutes. Again, I'm going to be using my heat gun to help dry it before I actually lift the stencil. You really, really don't want to be lifting a stencil until it's at least tacky dry. Again, I have some areas I'm going to have to go over with a paintbrush just because the wood is uneven and I can't get to those areas very easily without kind of messing things up. So I'm going to take care of this right now. Trying to just look around and make sure I haven't missed a whole lot. Hopefully it's gonna come out. And I'm just gonna stick this little spouncer brush in my water and make sure that I'm rinsing it. Ooh, that's some water. Ooh. Okay. Going to grab my heat gun here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the tape and start to lift this ever so gently. Don't want it to be in too big of a hurry. Yes, okay. So yeah, you can see that this stencil was definitely pouncing around, and so I lost some of my definition between the flowers, and some of the birds have got that kind of rough edge because the stencil paint got underneath the edge. So there's one of two ways you can do this. You can go back in with blue paint and try to finish those edges up, or you can take white paint and cover up the little boo-boos. It's kind of up to you. I don't know that I am going to have to do too much of that, but I am going to grab a paintbrush, and there was some areas that I definitely wanted to go back and kind of fix and fill in because I couldn't get to that area. So I've got one right here. I'm just going to fill in this petal a little bit. So I see there's a stem here that needs to be So yeah, so it's really important to watch the stencil and make sure it stays as secure as possible. There are a lot of stencils out there on the market that are self-adhesive as well, so you can try those. But I find that sometimes those self-adhesives, they stick too well, and then you end up ruining either the stencil or the project because you can't get the stencil off. So it's just something you kind of want to be aware of when you're using that kind of stuff. Always read the package instructions, the stencil instructions, and yeah. Okay. Just going to take a quick look, make sure that I'm not missing anything that needs to be filled in. And I have this bird up here in the corner that's kind of bothering me, so I am gonna grab some white paint, put a little bit on my palette here, just a little bit, and then I am going to try and, oh, is that the brush I was using? Nope, I was using a different one. Okay. Going to try and use just a little bit of white paint to help with some of those little blobs that are on the edge. Okay. So I am almost completed this little fix with this bird. All right. And so as I was saying earlier, I'm going to now take some metallic gold paint, and I'm kind of gonna fill in or just put like another little shiny coat on some of this, just to give it an extra little oomph. And I am, oops, and some of these flowers got a little close to each other, so I'm going to put the white back in between there. So again, this is any kind of touch-up you want to do, you can do as much or as little as you want. Okay. All right. So I'm going to grab my metallic gold. This is Deco Art Americana Metallics. Very cool gold color. Very awesome, shiny. I'm not going to want a lot, so I'm just going to use what's in my lid here. And then I'm going to take a dry brush. This little guy's a dry brush. I'm not going to get it wet because I like the technique that a dry brush allows me to just gently add something without making it too wet and too blendable. So I'm just going to come up to my little birdie here, and I'm just going to roll on a stroke of gold paint. I'm going to do it to the leaves. Follow the shape of the leaves and the flowers. And just kind of just add a little shimmery sparkle here. Might be hard to see too on the camera, but it's there. It's very pretty. I'm going to put some along this little birdie. Put some gold along the belly. Okay. Don't know if you can see that shimmer, but it's there. I think I might put a little bit on those wings too. So this is kind of a little tedious project if you're doing like an overlay like I am, but and so this part can take a while. It just depends on how much of the stencil you want to fire up. You don't have to do every flower either or leaf. You can leave a couple here and there. But this gold is so pretty against this blue that I might find it hard to stop. So Okay. So I'm getting into my zone here. Just going to continue doing these little gold accent lines around my flowers. And remember, you don't have to do each one. You can leave some of them unpainted. All right. Yeah, I'm kind of liking that. Hi, Alice. How you doing? Okay. So I'm just going to add a little bit of gold to this blue. A little bird down here. I'm thinking I might also add a little bit above just to give it. There we go. Again, this gold I'm just using to give this little stencil I was using some little bit of pizzazz to it, and I'm painting on some gold metallic paint. And so what happens is when you see it in the light, it shimmers and gives this little plaque a really cute, fun feel. It came with its own little hanging rope, so. All right. So again, guys, this was just a quick little tutorial on how to use a stencil to put it down, and using a really pretty blue against this white wash. It's striking, it's high contrast. And then, of course, put in a little bit of gold metallic paint let's do this, some shimmer and pizzazz. I'm going to actually take some of this gold paint. I'm going to give this little birdie and gold eyeball. I'll do that down here as well. Very cool. Okay. Alright guys, well that was my tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. As soon as I'm done here, I will save it and it will be back on Facebook, so if you missed any part of it, you can watch it again. And of course, just wanted to remind you guys that I'm doing all sorts of things right now. For Mother's Day, I have a painting party session coming up on Zoom for painting tulips. So if you guys want to join me there, that would be really cool. It's also going to be a special, it's $10 just to, if you buy a $10 ticket, you get the link to the Zoom, and whoever's in your household can paint with you. So, all right, guys. Again, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had fun, and I will see you again next week. All right, guys. Bye.